TLC sold an album that generated a reported $75 million. Each of the three women in the group took home about $50,000. That second number isn't ours. It's the one t-boz gave years later, sitting on a talk show, doing the arithmetic out loud for an audience that didn't quite believe her. Here's the part that's harder to believe. In the summer of 1995, TLC had the #1 single in the country with Waterfalls. Their album CrazySexyCool had already sold past 10 million copies. They were in the middle of a sold-out arena tour, and in that same summer, all three of them walked into a federal courthouse and filed for bankruptcy. Not the figurative kind. Real paperwork, a real case number, a judge. Each of the three owed more than $500,000 to their own management company. The best-selling girl group in America was legally broke, while its biggest album was still sitting in every record store in the country. CrazySexyCool wasn't just a hit. It became the first album by a girl group ever to sell more than 10 million copies in the United States, a level the record business calls diamond, the kind of number most artists of any kind never come close to. We're going to go through the whole thing in order, because the order is where it starts to make sense. How three teenagers ended up signing the contract that did this. The math one of them did on camera, line by line, in front of a television crew. The marriage that sits quietly underneath all of it. The afternoon the group walked into an office in Manhattan and refused to let anyone leave. And what was actually left of the money when the dust finally settled. And they earned that 10 million. What TLC did was blend hip-hop and R&B at a time when the industry still treated those as two separate audiences, and they did it with songs that talked directly to young women about their own lives. That made them one of the most valuable things their label owned. Which is what gives the rest of this its shape. This isn't the story of a group that failed and lost its money. It's the story of a group that succeeded on a scale almost no one ever reaches, and lost anyway. Start in Atlanta, around 1990. The version of TLC everyone remembers is 3 people. That is not how it began. The group was put together by a woman named Crystal Jones. She is the reason for the letters. The C in TLC was Crystal. Tion was the T, and a rapper named Lisa Lopes, who would soon become Left Eye, was the L. Crystal built the trio, and she brought it to a woman named Perry Reed, who most people knew as Pebbles. Pebbles had been a singer herself, with a hit of her own in the late 80s, and she had moved into management. Her company was called Pebiton. She looked at these girls, liked what she heard, gave the group its name, and made sure the name belonged to her. Not to them, to her company. Then came the contract. The people being asked to sign it were teenagers, somewhere between 18 and 21 years old. And Crystal Jones, the one who had assembled the whole thing, did the sensible thing. She asked if she could take the contract home and let her mother look at it before she put her name on it. Pebbles said no, so Crystal did not sign. The other 2 did, and just like that, Crystal was out of the group she had created. A young woman named Rosonda Thomas was brought in to replace her, and because the C still had to stand for something, they called her Chilli. Sit with that for a second, because it's the whole story in miniature. The one person who paused, who asked for a lawyer, who wanted an adult to read the fine print, is the one who lost everything before the first record even came out. The 3 who signed without reading it became world famous, and then owed $500,000 each. The terms are worth saying plainly. Their royalty rate was around 7%, which was low even for that era. Management took an enormous slice off the top of everything. They owned none of the publishing on their own songs, which is where a great deal of the real money in music actually lives. The advances they got weren't gifts. They were loans, and every cost the label laid out got charged straight back to them before they saw a cent. The recording and the videos, the tours, the hotels, even the clothes they wore on screen, all of it a running tab in their names. There's a simple way to feel how that works. Imagine being told, "Congratulations, you've earned $1 million," and in the same breath being handed a bill for $950,000, because that's what it cost to turn you into a star, and you're the one who owes it back. On paper, they were millionaires. In practice, they were carrying the receipts, and the more successful the album got, the deeper the hole went, because success cost money, and the money was theirs to repay. That brings us to the math, and the best person to explain it is Left Eye, because she's the one who actually did it. In 1999, on the show Behind the Music, she sat down and walked through the numbers the way you'd explain a padded bill to someone who'd been overcharged. There are 100 points on an album, she said. TLC had 7 of them. Every point is worth about 8 cents. 7 times 8 is 56. So every time an album sells, the group earns 56 cents. Sell 10 million albums, and that's $5.6 million. Sounds like a fortune. It isn't, not yet. The label had spent around $3 million making the record and shooting the videos. And in the record business, the artist pays all of that back. So take $3 million off the 5.6, and now you've got $2.6 million left. Then the tax bracket at that level takes almost half, and you're down to about $1.3 million. Split that between 3 people. Then pay the managers, and the lawyers, and the accountants out of what remains. What each of them actually kept, in 1993 and 1994, was somewhere around $50,000 a year. Left Eye put it about as flatly as anyone could. "You're left with $300,000, she said. "I can buy a nice house with that. And what do I pay my bills with? So hold the 2 numbers next to each other." The album generated a reported $75 million. The women who made it took home $50,000 apiece. Now the figures we've just gone through are the ones the group said out loud, in interviews, over the years. They're worth trusting, but they're the group's own account of themselves. The numbers that almost no one ever quotes are the ones sitting in the court file, and those aren't anyone's memory. They're a matter of public record. The case is filed under the name Watkins, which is Tion's last name. The date is July 3rd, 1995. And in the schedules of that bankruptcy, each member of TLC listed roughly $566,000 owed to Pebitone, their own management company. Not to a bank, to the people who were supposed to be working for them. There's more, and it's oddly specific. A few months earlier, in March of that year, each of them had taken a personal loan directly from LaFace, their label. The amounts are recorded down to the dollar. Tion borrowed just under $89,000. Lisa borrowed a little over $147,000. Rosonda, a little over $113,000. These were the biggest pop stars in the country at that exact moment, borrowing money from the company, getting rich off their records just to cover their own lives. When TLC filed, the label and the management company went to court to try to get the case thrown out. Their argument, in essence, was that the women weren't really broke, that they simply wanted a better deal and were using bankruptcy as a lever. The judge looked at it and disagreed. The court ruled the bankruptcy had been filed in good faith. That ruling matters more than it might sound. Labels and managers lose almost nothing when an artist signs a bad deal. because most artists never earn enough for it to matter. The ones at the very top are the exception, and TLC was carrying their entire label on its back. For a court to examine the whole arrangement and find that the biggest act in the building had gone bankrupt honestly was the system quietly conceding that the deal had done exactly what the group always said it did. Then there is the marriage, and once you know it, the rest stops looking like a run of bad luck and starts looking like a design. Pebbles, the manager who took her cut off the top, and whose job was to fight the label on the group's behalf, was married to L.A. Reid, and L.A. Reid was the co-founder and co-head of LaFace, the label on the other side of that fight. So the person negotiating against the label, for the girls, was married to the man running the label. Both sides of the table were the same household. And then the lawyers. When teenagers sign a deal like this, the one protection that's supposed to exist is independent counsel, someone whose only loyalty is to them. The attorneys TLC ended up with were connected to Pebbles as well, which means that at the moment, 3 young women signed away the rights to the most successful girl group catalog in American history. There was not a single person in the room whose only job was to protect them. This wasn't unique to TLC either. The same label in the same years had another superstar named Toni Braxton, who we have covered before on this channel. She sold more than 40 million records, said her royalties came out to less than $2,000, and filed for bankruptcy twice. When she finally settled with the label, a gag order came attached. 10 years of silence, and it wasn't until she wrote a book long afterward that the real size of it came out. More than $20 million. The pattern wasn't an accident that kept happening. It was just how the machine ran. It's worth pausing on Left Eye here, because the reason she was serving a sentence at the time is its own strange piece of the story, and it feeds right back into the money. In June of 1994, in the middle of all their success, she got into a fight with her boyfriend, the football star Andre Rison, and she set fire to a pile of his sneakers in the bathtub of his mansion. The fire did not stay in the bathtub. It took the entire house. And this was not a small house. 7 bedrooms, 6 fireplaces, a recording studio built right into it, all of it gone. She was charged with arson, released on $75,000 bail, and eventually sentenced to probation, time in a halfway house, and a $10,000 fine, part of which, about $1,500, was set aside specifically for the medical bills of the firefighters who got hurt putting it out. And the insurance fallout from that fire became one more weight on the group's finances, at the exact moment they were trying to work out where their real income had gone. Which is how we get to the afternoon in Manhattan. And this is the part that tends to surprise people who thought they knew the whole story. By the middle of the decade, TLC had run out of patience for asking nicely. Left Eye, who was at that point still working off the sentence connected to the fire, became the one who decided they'd go straight to the top. She gathered some people she knew, arranged a car, and the group went to the offices of Clive Davis, the president of Arista, the parent company sitting above LaFace. They walked in, and they wanted an answer to exactly one question. Where is our money? Sean Combs, Puffy, happened to be there for a meeting of his own, and by the group's account, he was asked to leave the room and then went and told people what was going on. The story, as TLC has told it over the years, has sometimes included guns. It's also a story they've walked back since. Chilli later said plainly that they did not pull guns on anyone, that maybe a friend waiting outside had one, but that the version people love to repeat grew a little taller than the truth. What isn't in question is that the police were called, that the standoff ended, and that not long after, the contracts finally got renegotiated. There's a smaller detail from around that same time that says as much as the standoff does. The group took their own platinum plaques, the awards for selling all those millions of records, and gave them away to people in the neighborhood. When the label later demanded the plaques back as part of the legal fight, TLC's answer was, more or less, that they were somewhere out in the projects now, and the label was welcome to go find them. So what was actually left after all of it? Late in 1996, the disputes settled. TLC got out from under Pebetone, started dealing with the label directly, and did one thing that tells you exactly how little they'd owned before. They bought their own name. The reporting on it is that they paid $1 million for each letter. 3 letters. $3 million to own the word that had been printed on every one of their records. The word that millions of people already connected to no one but them. Even the comeback came with a price tag that tells you how the business worked. The producer they wanted for their next album, a man named Dallas Austin, reportedly asked for more than $4 million and a level of control the group wasn't willing to give, and the record stalled for a while over it. That album, Fan Mail, finally arrived in 1999 and debuted at number 1. Pebbles and L.A. Reid divorced in 1996, and in the years afterward, both of them, at different points, pointed at TLC as part of what had broken the marriage. Pebbles would later sue the network that made a television movie about the group, saying it portrayed her unfairly, and that suit was quietly settled out of court. But the shadow of that first contract was long. In 2011, more than 15 years after the bankruptcy, t-boz filed again, this time owing more than $760,000. And in the paperwork, there's a single line showing what the TLC royalties were still bringing her at that point. About $1,200 a month. Crystal Jones, the founder who'd been pushed out at the very start, didn't disappear. She told her side of it years later, in her own book, how the group she'd dreamed up went on to conquer the world without her. And by her account, before Left Eye died, the two of them saw each other one last time, and Left Eye apologized. Crystal said they hugged, and that by then, she understood it had only ever been business. Left Eye didn't get the long version of any of this. In 2002, she was in a car in Honduras, there doing charity work, when the vehicle crashed. She was the only one of the 8 people inside who didn't survive. She was 30 years old. Whatever her estate was worth, after everything she'd sold and everything she'd earned, came to a few $100,000. The best-selling girl group America ever produced moved something on the order of 65 million records around the world. And the clearest figure any of the 3 of them ever put on what she personally kept from the biggest album of all of it was $50,000.